This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the newest episode of the Believe in Oregon podcast. I'm Zachary, Neel. Here's Jonathan Stewart. Jay Stu, what's up, man? How we doing?
Good, man. Just enjoying this beautiful Tuesday.
Yeah.
Had a chance to go to New Orleans.
Were you down there for the Super Bowl?
Baby. Went down Wednesday, Thursday, came back Friday night.
I feel like that's kind of the right way to do this. Like, go down for the pre-stuff and then come back for the actual game. Don't have to deal with that travel nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, back in my day, I used to go for the whole entire week, basically. You'd have appearances, paid appearances, opportunities, and then parties. And the way my body's set up now, I could possibly be buried wherever the Super Bowls are.
What were those parties like?
Tried to last that long.
What were those parties like?
Well, I mean, it's actually kind of like a bit of a reunion.
Mm-hmm.
What was cool about this year, I went there for Radio Row for the Carolina Panthers and did some stuff there. And it's basically like a reunion, being able to meet some, all-time greats, the legends, and now me being a part of the legends community, it's just like a bit of a fraternity, if you would say, right? And it's actually cool. Like I go up to everyone. I'm always like, "Hey, I'm Jonathan Stewart," just in case they don't know.
Yeah. You never want to assume.
Yeah, I never. Yeah, but it's cool because like Marcus Allen was like, "Hey, Jonathan, I know who you are." Or
of course.
Eric Dickerson, "Oh yeah, I know who you are." Like, it's just cool to know that the veteran guys, like the not just veteran but legendary
the Hall
veterans, Hall of Famers, have had an eye on me for some time. So it's cool.
Yeah, man.
And so yeah, it was fun. But back in the day, it was basically the same thing as far as a reunion, but just more so, you're at parties, networking. The older you get, you learn, which I think a lot of the younger guys, in comparison to how my generation kind of came into the NFL, we weren't really too hip on the word networking, the thought process of like, hey, think forward, don't be in the present, but prepare yourself for the future, and for future endeavors. So it's a lot of great opportunities for cats to really network and rub shoulders with the right people.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And I'm assuming that's where you got sick too.
No, it was actually, I feel like maybe Wednesday.
Oh, so you were sick when you were
I'm
down
not gonna
there?
say I'm not gonna say I'm sick.
Uh-huh.
Just more so like my body's just run tired.
Yeah.
Like
You're
before
out
I
of
left, I
energy.
was doing a bunch of stuff. Been working out hard, getting after it. But whenever you start feeling run down, it's like a quick reminder to take care of yourself. So
Need to
I've
relax.
been definitely doing that. Been, just taking it easy a little bit more.
I hear you. I would like to take it easy a little bit more than I am, but I'm struggling to find the time to do that, but that's all right.
Yeah.
It's a fun time in life. We're going to open up the mailbag today for you guys and get into some burning off-season questions. We've had several submissions over the past few weeks, so we've been wanting to get to, and then a few over the past couple of days when I put out the call to action. So we'll do that, but there are several things to talk about before we get there, though. At the top of the show, we need to talk about Junior Adams, Oregon wide receiver coach. He is quote unquote expected to leave for the Dallas Cowboys to take over as the new wide receivers coach under Brian Schottenheimer, the new head coach down there in Dallas.
Good luck.
I know, right? As we record this on Tuesday afternoon, that has not been finalized yet that I've seen, but it's progressing in a manner where it's like, yeah, he's probably going to take that job. So The Cowboys also tried to hire away Rashad Samples, Oregon's running back coach, earlier this year. The Ducks were able to hold on, but now they're taking Junior Adams. What were your initial thoughts when you heard this news?
Having a talent like Tez Johnson and Trayshawn Holden, Evan Stewart, and seeing what they've put on display this year, as far as their talent and just the growth, it's to be expected, right? You go, what, they were 13-1 this year,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. um, but you're gonna get those calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Dan Lanning, he knows it's coming. He's got a great staff. And I don't suspect this to be a hurdle for them to really bang their head against, for people to be worried about or frustrated about. Coaches coach, players play. The good thing is we have Dan Lanning, who doesn't miss anything, it seems, right?
Hasn't yet, yeah.
So he knew this day was coming, so he probably has already had like a list of 10 guys that he's going to call.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably already made a decision. He's just going to go through the process. So
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
I agree. When I saw this news come out, what, 2 days ago, I think it was, or no, it was Sunday morning. Yeah, it was a couple days ago. Instant reaction is like, oh, that's tough. Like, we can admit that's tough for the Ducks. This is not a loss you want to make. Junior Adams is a great coach.
yeah,
He's an incredible talent developer. I mean, Cooper Cup, Puka Nakua, Romo Dunze, Troy Franklin, Tez Johnson, the list goes on and on. I mean, he's put some incredibly talented players into the league, and they all, regard him as one of the best coaches they've ever played for. I mean, you talk to Cooper Cup, and he's got nothing but great things to say about Junior Adams. So definitely a big loss in terms of development and recruiting for Oregon. But like you said, Dan Lanning, I'm sure this was not a surprise to him. While it may have been a surprise to us that, Junior Adams is leaving, I'm sure that he had a very good heads up as to what was going to come. But this is a really important hire going forward. I mean, they have to get this one right because that wide receiver position has improved so much during Dan Lanning's tenure, and that's when Junior Adams has been there, and they can't have that take a step back now.
yeah. And you talk about the impact as far as his for the University of Oregon. Um, you definitely, to your point, you have to replace that guy with the same caliber, the same tier, or better,
Yeah.
because you're having now a quarterback that's coming into position that's going to need to have those receivers, at tip top shape, running crisp routes, finding leverage, finding, whatever it is to win, those one on ones, creating space. So having a coach that can come in here and iron out the details when it comes to that position, to put guys in position to win.
I agree. So let's talk about some guys that, maybe on the radar, maybe someone that the Lanning has reached out to. I'm not sure. But first of all, I think if I were to, you know, choose which way the Ducks go, or at least predict which way this goes, I would not be at all surprised to see them promote Rashad Samples, the running backs coach, into the wide receiver coach and make him the co-offensive coordinator because he has experience there. I mean, when he came over from Arizona State a year ago, he was the wide receivers coach there. We know that he is one of, if not the best recruiter on the staff right now. He's incredibly valuable to this team, and that would leave them with needing to hire a new running backs coach, which I think I don't know what the hierarchy is as far as position coaches. It's probably different on every team, every coaching staff, but I think wide receiver coach may be a little bit harder to find an elite one than a running backs coach. I may be wrong on that. Tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I could see them promoting Samples a little bit, which I think that could be why they were able to keep him from the Cowboys. Maybe they knew this was happening that far away, but I could just see that happening being the next move for this team.
Yeah, it's actually interesting how they went from Samples. I guess if that was a rumor or not, I don't know, but um, uh, to the receivers coach. But
I mean, Samples did interview with the Cowboys. He took an interview for
okay,
their running backs job, and then they hired I forget what his name was from Texas.
mm, okay. So he almost took the job.
And that's where I'm thinking I do not have inside information on this. I wonder if Oregon said, "Hey."
So do you put him in the doghouse? Like,
Well,
hey,
no, but like they
you
kept
try
him.
to
They said,
take that
"Hey."
job, you're gonna stay put, bud.
Maybe they said, "Hey, if you stay here, we got a position opening up at the wide receiver position and
Okay.
co-offensive coordinator." Maybe that kept him there. I have no idea. That's just me speculating.
Speculating. Yeah.
Mhm,
Um, yeah, I think, you know, the running back position is, you know, the hardest in my opinion as far as the skill
mhm.
position on the body, right?
Okay.
And being able to guide the player to excel within his own ability, right? Um, the X's and O's piece to it, unless you are doing some special things where you're trying to line guys up in the slot and all that. But even with that, those special guys are spending time with the receivers coach. Now,
Mhm,
Samples is a guy that is clearly aware of the high end pieces to the offense. So him being in the running back room, um, doesn't mean that he's not, I think, a part of discussions when it comes to the overall game plan and offense. He strikes me as a guy that has that type of intel, right?
mhm,
So to promote him to the receivers coach would be a smart move because he knows the ins and outs and he's a part of those discussions as every coach is. But when it comes to a guy that has the understanding of, you know, he has a great football background, right? And
mhm,
so where he was in Arizona, that's what he was doing.
mhm,
And I think the reason why Dan Lanning brought him to Oregon is because of that background, right? He knew he had a good receivers coach, and that was probably going to be leaving at some point. So you would need a backup plan.
mhm.
But again, you always go through the process because you just never know. There might be somebody out there that might interview well. But when you have a guy in your back pocket, this type of transition uh, usually runs successful.
Yeah, out on DucksWire right now, we've got a list of 10, potential candidates that I think could be interesting, both at wide receiver position, at the wide receiver coach and running backs coach, because, I don't know exactly which way they're going to go, but 10 names that you need to know. Two guys that really stuck out to me, I'll go over them. LSU wide receiver coach Cortez Hankton, I think is a really intriguing potential hire. He's a wide receiver coach and co-offensive coordinator at LSU right now. He was the wide receiver coach and co-OC at Georgia for the same years that Dan Lanning was there from 2018 to 2021. He also worked with Marshall Malco at Georgia. While at LSU, he helped develop and produce guys like Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., a couple of really, really good players. He's also a really good recruiter. He was the primary recruiter for George Pickens when he was at Georgia, and as well as Adonai Mitchell. So that's someone who, I have no idea if they've reached out to him or even are interested in him. But I was going through Lanning's Rolodex and Malco's Rolodex and was like, oh, okay, there's a name who I think they could probably call up and sway to come to Oregon.
hmm Yeah, that's a good find if they pick up the phone and call him because talk about a culture full
Mhm.
of receivers, right? Like
Yeah.
he went in there, obviously he was hired there because they believe that he can continue what is expected when it comes to the receivers that have come out of that college.
If you can coach receiver at LSU, you can coach receiver anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, another guy that stood out to me is current Georgia wide receiver coach James Coley. He was also in Athens when Lanning was there, and he went to Texas A&M when Malco was there. He's back in Georgia now. Well, I think he's a good receivers coach. I think more importantly, he's a really elite recruiter. He was listed as the primary for a lot of five stars like Shamar Stewart, Lamarcus Joyner, and Isaiah Wilson, among others. So this is a guy who, I think obviously if you're coaching receivers at Georgia, you're good at your job, but you're also a really, really good recruiter. And I think that's something that Lanning has shown before that he values a lot on his coaching staff.
Yeah, and a familiar face.
Yeah. Which route out of those, the samples hire or promotion or going an outside hire for receiver, which one would you rather see them take?
I mean, the LSU hire would be nice,
It's kind of
but
intriguing, right?
yeah, like I think if you wanted to keep everything the same and um, there's really no need for Samples to go coach the receivers because he's doing a good job with the running backs and
Mhm.
and just keeping things fluent. Um, then I think the right piece would be to get LSU's guy in here. Um,
Yeah, I think that's my call too. Like I was just reading up on him, like, oh, this guy would that'd be a hire where I think a lot of
yeah.
Duck fans would be like, oh
And
yes.
just recruiting wise too, right? It's
Mhm,
like, oh, what's your resume or where'd you come from? Oh, LSU. Like, um, there's just something there that resonates when it comes to recruiting.
mhm.
That sits well with me. Um, Now I will say this, Samples being, having, the background, his dad coaches at the college,
High
that
school level at Reginald or
Decorian,
at
yeah, that Decorian went
Duncanville,
to.
yeah.
Um, there might be a connection there that might make sense for Samples to step into that position to where he can have some insights as far as how to raise this young man to be something special.
Mhm,
Like he might have some stories that his dad might tell him, or just the intel of how he ticks, and all those things really matter when it comes to having a special player in that room. Because it helps you be a better coach,
mhm,
and so there is something to say to where, yeah, just move him on over to the receiving room and focus there because Decorian is going to be a special player, and we want to make sure we are intentional about how we, um, you know, get him out of his shell or and help him excel.
mhm. Help him develop.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I don't know what the timeline is gonna be on this potential hire. Obviously, the deal has to be finalized with Junior Adams first before anything can happen, but I think Oregon is in actually a really beneficial spot where this happened in the calendar because the transfer portal's closed. I mean, it's not like they're last year when Carlos Lachlan went to Ohio State, it happened, I think, in the middle of spring football or like right close to spring football, and they were kind of scrambling to get someone in there. You got the benefit of time on your side, so I don't think the Lanning has to rush and make this hire in the next week, 2 weeks. Like he's got a month until I think spring football starts, probably middle of March. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go from here. But that's something I'll be following definitely going forward. Other news: Oregon added a transfer portal player on Monday afternoon, much to my surprise. I think everyone else's surprise as well. Former Ole Miss safety Jadon Canady, redshirt senior with 1 year of eligibility remaining. He played at Tulane under current Oregon Ducks defensive backs coach Chris Hampton. So there is a connection there when they were together at Tulane. He's a really versatile player. This guy is able to play out wide at the cornerback. He's played in the box as a nickel, in the slot, or back deep as a free safety. So it seems kind of like last year where they got Brandon Johnson from Duke in the transfer portal that came in. They knew they needed a true nickel back, and he came in and he played that really well. So I think that was a good starting point for what this transfer is like. But I was relatively surprised when I saw this news yesterday. I was like, oh, okay, they're not done in the transfer portal yet, but I think it is a move that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you have who the um who's the backup nickel? Austin.
Dalen Austin, yeah, probably he was going to be my starter. Yeah, I had projected him to
Yeah.
be the starter.
So I mean, it's always good to get veteran guys in
Mhm.
there that know what they're doing, that have done it before. Because as you know, what was our problem last year?
Injuries and depth.
Injuries and depth,
Yeah.
right? And so the secondary cannot afford to have someone step in that is not familiar with, the task. And so
Mhm.
always, bet on the side of, I mean, the good thing about college football, this is not, like the pros, whereas you have, a 53-man roster and you're only supposed to have a certain amount of players. Like college, a little different,
Mhm.
right? Get guys in there where they fit, where they belong, and let them battle it out. And I think that's healthy for the younger guys to see Oregon still tapping into, we're still looking for the best.
Mhm.
So right now, we don't feel comfortable with you being the best. Mr. Austin. So
Yeah.
we're gonna bring someone in here, and maybe you can battle it out. Maybe you guys can. Maybe you learn something. Maybe it triggers you to be, what we expect you to be. It's always good to have healthy competition, and so this is a good find and timely.
Absolutely. All right, you want to talk Super Bowl? I feel like you deserve some props here because you called this Eagles win. I don't know that you predicted a blowout like this, but you were on the Eagles, and I was telling you that you were a
Yeah,
fool
the
picking
closer that
against
I got,
Mahomes.
the closer that I got to the Super Bowl, I actually start when I was at Radio Row. I was telling
Uh,
people it was going to be a blowout.
really? Wow, I'm
Yeah,
impressed. I did not see this coming.
and more so because I just start tapping into the belief that I had in that defensive line, bro.
Mhm.
The fact that they are that stacked up front,
So many guys.
and it presents a problem. Whenever you're able to just rush four guys.
Hmm.
Who does that sound like? Ohio State.
Ohio State. There we go.
Whenever you're able to rush four guys on the quarterback, and they're all four guys at the D line position, defensive end position, I mean, it's going to be hard to just pick people apart because everybody else is in coverage.
Yeah.
Okay, um, Josh Sweat, he's a straight dog. Um, he was a havoc on every single play, and um, it just Patrick Mahomes had no time. The offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs, um, they had no answer for that front four. Um, and so, I mean, kudos to the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, they said, hey, look, we're going to run our offense and we're not going to change much of anything.
Mm-mm.
And the Kansas City Chiefs with Spags basically said, hey, um, we're going to make the receivers, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Goddard. We're going to make those guys beat us,
Mhm. They
with
did,
Jalen Hurts going through the air.
which isn't a
And
bad game plan though.
but the thing that really took Philadelphia over the top isn't necessarily the pass game. It was his ability to make sound decisions
Mhm.
instantly, like
Just no
instant
mistakes.
decisions to take off and run whenever you feel pressure and you see a lane to run. 77 yards rushing.
Mhm.
That's what won the game, in
Yeah.
my opinion, because it takes all the gas out of a defense when you got things covered downfield. And all of a sudden, you see Jalen Hurts running for a first down and
Yeah.
more, right? But even more so, he obviously the pass that he had to Devontae Smith,
Mhm. It's
that
beautiful.
really like was icing on the cake at that moment.
Yeah.
It just really solidified that victory. It was a really, really, really good game by the Philadelphia Eagles. Um, the Kansas City Chiefs basically, showcased what it looks like to be one dimensional. I
Mhm.
mean, they didn't have a run game going into the thing. Um, Nolan Smith, the guy is a freaking animal in the run game.
Yeah.
I've never really seen a player consistently go in as the blow up guy when they're running gap schemes. When I say blow up guy, I mean a guy coming off the edge and meeting an offensive guard in the C gap and just getting underneath his chin strap and just blowing him up. So that was happening basically on every run play early on. They weren't going to run the ball if someone paid them $1 million. So
Yeah. They just couldn't do it.
they couldn't do it.
I wonder how Dan Lanning felt watching this game because Lanning is a big Chiefs guy,
Oh
but
yeah,
there are a lot of Georgia Bulldogs that he coached
yes there
on that
is.
Eagles defense. I mean,
Yes there is.
Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. You got Keely Ringo on there as well, Nolan Smith. I mean, there are some Georgia Bulldogs on this team that he
Yeah,
had a hand in developing. So I was just when I was watching that happen, I was like, I wonder what Dan's thinking right now because he grew up a Chiefs fan. He is a
Yeah.
massive Chiefs fan, so he's been enjoying the past few years. But he saw a lot of his guys taking it to his favorite team. So I just wonder what that experience was like for him.
Yeah. I can tell you, I was watching that game and I was thinking about Ohio State, Oregon Ducks. That front four on that D line, I was like, geez, this is the blueprint. If you were basically the Philadelphia Eagles has rewritten the script as far as what it's gonna take to win football games. It's back to the basics. Back to the
Yes,
basics for real.
I saw you
Because
tweet this, but it's like that's not all they have.
no,
They
they have
still
way
have elite players
they have
everywhere
way
else.
more, absolutely. But the reasons why certain teams with all those accessories
Mhm.
fail, it's because they don't have a
Starts up
cohesive
front.
front. They
Starts
don't
up front
have
for sure.
they don't have a defensive line that can just go after the quarterback and put 7 guys in coverage in the NFL at that, right?
Mhm,
This can be done in the college level, but to be done at the college in the NFL and the pros, that's really hard to do.
mhm.
Like you got grown men on both sides of the ball, you know, supposedly, number 1 and number 1 of each conference, right?
Yeah,
So they basically made a case of nah, defense wins championships.
yeah, yeah. It absolutely did. It absolutely did. What was, your thoughts on the halftime performance, Kendrick?
I thought it was cool, man. Like,
Mhm.
obviously, my number one will always be Michael Jackson,
Yeah.
in '93. I still remember it to this day. Like, he
The
sat
year I
there
was
forever
born.
and didn't do anything, and then he just started moving, and then took his
Uh-huh.
glasses and took them down, and then did his thing and said, "Ah!" But, but I thought it was a good um, it was a good performance. I mean, especially for the TV copy. I don't really know what it was like in person.
Yeah.
But the TV copy, the
That's supposed
message
to be a
was
TV
sent.
show.
I
Yeah.
I think it was awesome that he uses his platform, for things that are for things that are of substance, right? I think
Mhm,
that's where we are in this day and age. We are so glued and so entitled to the entertainment factor, especially guys. People, we're watching TV. We're not paying for this game. I mean, we're paying for cable. We're paying for the source of what we're watching, but in the
mhm,
grand scheme of things, this is the entertainment. And
mhm.
if you're arguing, oh, why is he doing this? Why not? Right?
Yeah. His
And
choice.
I think there's just, we're in this day and age where it's bigger than entertainment. It's bigger than football.
Mhm.
And if you don't get that and you want to, stay, in La La Land and whatnot, then you should be in La La Land. Put that thing on mute, go get you some chips and get back to business. But
Yeah, I think
for
that's a good way to say it, like, this didn't have to be for everyone. Like, if it wasn't for you,
yeah,
it wasn't for you. You don't have to have an
yeah.
opinion
I
on it.
mean, if Taylor Swift was performing, it wouldn't have been for me. I would have gone
I
and
would've
got some
gotten up
chips
and
and said nothing.
yeah, bathroom break.
But
Yeah,
because it
exactly.
but whenever things string a chord, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
People have something to say, right?
Always.
If Taylor Swift was performing, I wouldn't have nothing to say because I don't give a dog,
I don't
right?
care. Not for me.
If Coldplay was playing, I think Coldplay had one of the top halftime performances.
They had a good one, yeah.
They had a good one. Um, U2 had a good performance. I think they, the
Beyoncé had a
all
great one.
Beyonce had a great one. And then, but as far as my top is Michael Jackson,
Mhm.
Purple
Yeah,
Rain,
he was good.
Prince,
He was good.
and then West Coast Snoop Dogg, everybody
Yeah,
on
that was a great one
stage.
too.
And that's because that's what I relate to.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I went into this with super high expectations because I mean, Kendrick Lamar is my favorite artist. He's definitely
yeah,
top of the top for me. It didn't meet those expectations just because he didn't play his best stuff. Like, I would have loved to
yeah,
hear Money Trees, Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, all this stuff. He didn't play that, but, like, it's fine. I'm not mad at him
yeah,
for it. It was still entertaining. It was fun. He had a
right.
message to send. He got out and said it. So, I think it was
Like
still
you as a
really
fan
good.
of Kendrick Lamar, you were like, "Oh, I get it. I
He's
understand where he's
doing
going
something
with
here. I'm
this."
gonna let him. I'm gonna let him go to
Let
work.
him cook.
He's doing something bigger than me right now, so I'm gonna let him
Yeah,
cook.
exactly. He's doing something bigger than
Yeah,
us. He's doing
yeah,
something bigger and trying to tap into, you know, the core of people,
yeah,
creating core memories.
absolutely.
You want to know something? People are going to remember that halftime show.
Yeah,
They're going to
yeah,
remember it. They're going to be like,
yeah. It was
whenever I see a
polarizing for
PlayStation
sure.
code, when I see a PlayStation controller, I'm going to think about.
All right, let's get into the mailbag. Thank you guys again for submitting questions to us. We got quite a few, so let's dive in. I want to start with this one because it goes along with what we were talking about pretty recently. This one came late last night from Travis. Does it concern you at all that the staff is bringing in veteran defensive backs with Canady? I'd rather see the young players get a look instead of another 1 year rental at safety.
No, it doesn't concern me at all. I think this is just going back to the development process, and I think we're just catching up with those times, right? We want to be a team that is without no doubt,
Mhm.
capable of competing in the Big Ten next year. Our schedule is actually very favorable. Um,
Schedule's so
so
easy.
I think we just don't want to make any mistakes, and so you're gonna if the rules allow for us to, stack it up, I'm all for it. And what it does, it gives, those meeting rooms, those position rooms, a healthy balance of competition.
Mhm.
The moment that you feel like you've arrived, the moment that you feel like you're safe, things go downhill.
Yeah,
So I think it's healthy. I think it's great. And if the kids don't like it, you learn something about that kid.
totally. Well, and we've said it a million times before. We'll say it again. Like, competition is never a bad thing. Like,
Yeah.
competition is not going to make your team worse. Like, it's
Hmm.
you're putting the best against the best to see who can be the best of those, and you're going to play him. And if he goes down, then you've got another guy who's been tested and who has been, developed and maybe has a chip on his shoulder who's going to play
Yeah.
better because of it. So, yeah,
I've
I
never,
understand. Go ahead.
I've never also believed in the thought of, hey, did so and so play his rookie year or his freshman
Mhm.
year? Did he play his
Yeah.
freshman year? Because if he didn't play his freshman year, he's not going to be drafted. Did he
Yeah.
play his sophomore year? Because if he didn't play his sophomore year, I don't know if I want to look at him. Did he play his junior year? Did he play his senior year? And if he didn't play his junior year or senior year, that means he ain't getting drafted. That means
That's
he ain't
fair.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, if you're bringing in veteran talent and your sophomore can't beat him out, that means he's not ready yet.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think it goes along the lines of, you have to trust in Coach Hampton on this one because it feels like this was kind of up to him. Like, this is his guy from Tulane. He wanted to bring
Yeah.
him in, throw him in there. Like, if it works, great. If not, okay. They
Yeah.
got a lot of
No
other
harm, no
players they can
foul.
go to. It's fine. I think there's only upside in this move. All right. This one is from Cameron. What is the flight risk of our top wide receivers now that Junior Adams is leaving? Should that be a major concern for you?
It's not a concern. I think we kind of answered that earlier, but again, my trust is in Dan Lanning because that's
Mhm.
exactly what his job description is to delegate and to make sure he has um the assistant coaches in place for them to move the ball. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So he's been doing it, he's done it, and I don't expect anything less.
Well, and I think Oregon also does a really good job of not having, one single coach as a recruiter. Like they like group effort all of these recruitments. So like say DeCorian Moore, like yeah, he may have been a huge. I know he was actually a Rashad Samples guy. That was his primary recruiter because of the Duncanville connection. But say he was a major, Junior Adams guy, and he was super sad that Junior Adams left. There's other guys on the staff that have been so hands on with him throughout his recruitment. And that's just an example. I mean, that goes for all of the guys in this recruiting class. So I think there's enough widespread relationships on this staff with these high end recruits. I'm curious to see some of the guys already on the roster, like, your Kyler Casper, your Justice Lowe, your Jorian Dickies, guys that may still be trying to crack into that starting rotation. How does this impact them because they were in the middle of getting developed by Junior Adams, and losing that may hurt a little bit more for them rather than just having someone recruit you. But
Yeah,
I don't think it's a huge risk. I think Oregon is solid enough as coaches and recruiters across the board that they should be fine here.
agreed.
All right, this one is for you, Jay Stu, from Aaron. What's your opinion on running back by committee situations and how it impacts an individual player's development? Do you believe in a lead back hierarchy, and do you think it's different in college than it is in the NFL?
Depends on what type of player you are.
Okay.
Um, this day and age, I was actually talking about this earlier about the prototypical running back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I had to look at a running back in the NFL right now, Saquon Barkley is a unicorn, right? Um, and I can almost put Christian McCaffrey in that unicorn, right? Not almost. I'll put Christian McCaffrey in that unicorn. Let me rephrase that. Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey are unicorns when it comes to the running back position. Jahmyr Gibbs is close to that. But Jahmyr Gibbs is the prototypical guy that you want in your backfield because he can carry the load, right? But you would rather him share the load.
Mm-hmm.
You would rather him share a load with a guy like David Montgomery, a guy that's more of a brute force runner, but can also take it the distance. And so, why not have two running backs through a long season? It's a long one. The college days are getting longer, and so for a coaching staff, you would want it. And for the running back themselves, I will say this: me as a by committee or workout or workhorse, I want the ball every single time. If there's 30 carries to divvy up, I want all 30 carries. That's what I want. But I also understand, the end goal here. It's to win football games. And if this gives me longevity, I'm all for it. Just as long as I get an opportunity to showcase my talent, showcase why I can, be a feature back when needed. Saquon Barkley, unicorn. And this day and age, the running back has to be able to understand pass protection. He has to understand where to line up at receiver. He has to understand, you know, he's the check down option for the quarterback in certain situations. And he has to be a dog that can carry the ball 20 plus times a game. That's a lot more than what it used to be at the running back position. Like lining up in slot, lining up at, you know, Z, and not just being, a decoy, but being a legit being a legit threat, a legit weapon is part of that DNA. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I call those guys unicorns. Jahmyr Gibbs can do those things. I think pass protection might be one of those things where it's like, but and that's the reason why you have David Montgomery, a bigger back, come in there and, make sure the quarterback's protected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think this year though, Jahmyr Gibbs, he that last bit of run that they had, he showed himself. And so but to your question, running back by committee, you saw the Ohio State Buckeyes. They mastered that. Penn State mastered it. Oregon Ducks, we did a fantastic job with our guys, right? And given certain teams and different, you know, styles of play that you want to go into a game plan with, you can lean on one or the other when you have running back by committee. Unless you have a unicorn, doesn't matter who you have back there.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, if you can have a unicorn, you definitely you definitely get him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this one, interesting one from Jason that I think I'm going to take first. What do you think of Nebraska canceling their spring game because of tampering? And do you think Oregon would ever go that route? Um, First of all, I think it's pretty interesting. So the latest I've seen, Nebraska didn't officially cancel their spring game yet, but they are saying they're probably not going to televise it because Matt Rule came out and said, like, why would we do this? Because a lot of other people are just then getting a free look at all our players. They're going to tamper them and, try and get them into the transfer portal. They're getting to see all of our guys. Um, it's interesting. I think it's not completely wrong in this day and age of college football. That does put you at a little bit more risk. But um, as far as Oregon goes, I don't think this is a problem at all because did you watch Breaking Bad? Did you ever watch Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
So there's one, I forget when it is, but Walt is like, I am the one who knocks. Like his wife's all getting sad, like that someone's gonna come knock on their door and try and kill him. He's like, no, I am the one that knocks. I feel like Oregon is the one who knocks here. Like, not saying they go out and tamper and they're getting all these people. Like, I don't think they need to be scared of other teams coming and trying to steal their players from them. They're the ones that go out and get other players from the portal. So that's not
There
something that I
is
would worry about if I'm the Duck fan.
there is something to say though there. Um, put things in place to where they're never a problem, right?
Yeah.
So, to if we are watching the college football level tiptoe around what it might look like for a semi-pro secondary NFL level, the NFL don't televise nothing besides preseason.
Yeah.
So, and you definitely keep things in house, right? Because you don't want to give anyone any tallies on what you're doing. And so that's more from a game plan perspective, right? And so why wouldn't you treat that any differently when it comes to the plans that you have for these players?
Yeah.
So, uh, oh, I see you riding the bench. Why don't you come over here? Like, that's what I would be doing.
Well, I think it could also be interesting too. I mean, not from a tampering standpoint, but I think it could be interesting to not televise the spring game just to make it that much more of a coveted ticket and a hot
Yeah.
ticket and try and drive fans to actually go to the game and
Go
not
to the
sit at home and
games.
watch them. So,
Yeah.
because this is going to be a pretty highly anticipated spring game this year,
Yeah.
the start of the Dante
But I,
Moore
but
era.
I'm but what I'm saying is though, college is no longer becoming college football. So whatever the pros are doing, you're going to start seeing college level starting to fall in line.
Yeah,
In my
I think that's
opinion,
very fair.
you think Bill Belichick's going to want a bunch of fans over there at his practice?
No,
I
definitely
don't think so. What the hell are they doing here? Oh, it's spring
not.
practice for what?
Yeah.
And now,
Yeah.
like and the reason why is because you have spring, and you have all that time to gather all the intel and info that you would want to ever gather in between that time before you start your season, right? You can do all the methods and all the messing around that you want to do to opposing teams or
Mhm.
people in your conference. Whereas, the pro level, they have, their fan day experiences where they go and they scrimmage against each other, here and there, and they keep it light as far as the playbook. They just want to see certain guys move and take contact. Those types of things happen in training camp, which is literally weeks before they start playing football.
Yeah. All right, last one here. This one is from Trey. Who is a player on the team that nobody is talking about who you think will end up having a big season a la Bryce Betcher in 2024?
Mm,
It's a tough one. There's a
that is a tough one.
lot of answers.
There's really not a lot of talk going on, I guess, really talking
Yeah.
about guys in the portal and
Mhm.
um
I've got one if you want to think on it.
yeah, go ahead.
Blake Purchase.
Blake
Blake
Purchase.
Purchase, edge rusher, outside linebacker. He had a decent freshman season, true freshman season. He popped up a little bit, had a few nice games. I think he redshirted last year, didn't really play much at all. He's someone who I think could really, break out and have one of those roles. When you think about the edge rushers, you think about Mateo Uiagalelei, Tatum Tuioti. I want to see Elijah rushing as well, but Blake Purchase is someone who I think could really have a big impact this year. And it's tough to say that he's going to have a year like Bryce Betcher because that was pretty
Yeah.
incredible last year. But he's someone who I think can have a major role in this defense that not many people are talking about.
I'm looking at this roster here. Dewan Riggs.
Okay.
Dewan Riggs.
Yeah.
Running back.
He's
No
got
one's talking about him.
a lot of rungs to jump up on that depth chart, but I think he can do it.
Yeah. I think the depth chart is a depth chart just because they have to start somewhere,
Mhm.
And obviously Mekhi Hughes is, going to be somebody that we should be able to depend on. But I've also seen players rise from the ashes when given an opportunity. So, Riggs is a guy that strikes me as in that position. He understands how to make things happen. So does Mekhi Hughes, right? Making something out of nothing type of players. It'll be interesting to see, if he gains weight, more physical, more explosive, because he's already kind of got that dog in him a little bit, just kind of got a little shit to him. But he has, once you match that up with, the elements of him coming into a more substantial body fit, right? The body frame. I think that can be something that puts him over the top.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. All right, let's wrap it up there. We're going to come back next week, continue our offseason talk as we ramp up towards the Oregon spring game, which got announced while we were recording. Will be played on April 26th, Saturday at 1 p.m. at Autzen Stadium. Just are you coming out for that?
I may, but
Okay.
depends on the draft because that's the same
true.
weekend.
The draft of the few days before that, so
Yeah. So we shall see. But
we'll
this
see.
is going to
We'll
be
see.
a interesting, off season. That schedule, man, is
Looks good.
See you next year.
Looks like you can win them all.
Yeah, see you in 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You can check out more of my work at duckswire.usatoday.com. Follow me at Zachary C. Neel on Twitter. Follow Jay Stu on Twitter at Jonathan StewR1. And make sure to check out the Believe in Panthers podcast and the Stu and Crew podcast. For myself, Zach Neel, for my co host, Jonathan Stewart, we'll talk to you guys next week. Until then, take it easy.